In what has become a yearly matchup, the Seahawks and Giants will battle once again at Lumen Field on Sunday. Who has the edge with both teams coming off tough defeats? We'll be breaking it down on a new crossover Thursday here. Locked On Seahawks, Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12s and Giants country. This is Corbin Smith of the Locked On Seahawks. Glad to be up with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants for our weekly crossover Thursday special. We got an exciting game coming up on Sunday. The Seahawks hosting the Giants at Lumen Field in Week 5. Both these teams coming off of challenging losses. The Giants losing to the Cowboys, the Seahawks losing on Monday night to the Detroit Lions at Ford Field. Both teams will be looking to bounce back, and we're eager to look at some of the key storylines surrounding both these teams, keys to victory in Week 5, and, of course, our weekly spread predictions. All this coming courtesy of our friends at Prize Picks. Download the app and use the code LOCKEDONNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Patricia, the Giants off to a 1-3 start. I know that this is not what fans were hoping for in year 3 of the Brian Daboll era. Maybe that the team could get back to their winning ways from 2 years ago when they made the postseason, actually made the divisional round. Daniel Jones back healthy. But to this point, it's been much of the same in the win-loss column. Looking at where this Giants team is at right now, how do you compare the trajectory after 4 weeks to what we saw from this team last year when they disappointed and fell back in the standings and missed the postseason?
Yeah. So Corbin, I think it's not a little, I think it's a lot different. Last year, the Giants were absolutely wrecked by injuries. I mean, they had key injuries, 3 different quarterbacks. They had 5 different kickers or 4 different kickers. They had, I want to say at least 7 different offensive line combinations. So a little different scenario last year that led to a 6-11 record. This year, you could make the argument that the Giants, had they had a healthy kicker in week 2, they could have won that game. You could make the argument that had they not had some drop passes and some bad calls against them, they could have beat Dallas on Thursday night. But, I have a saying, woulda, coulda, shoulda, didn't, and they haven't. So that being said, it's the little things that the Giants are not doing there. They're just self-inflicting wounds. They're killing themselves with penalties at the worst possible time. They're dropping passes. They're not taking deep shots when they're there. The run game against Dallas in particular was just abysmal. So it's a bunch of little things that are just adding up. It's like, you have a big wall, and just when you think you've plugged one hole in the dam, now another one springs. And then you throw in the fact that they're really not getting the production out of their high value pass rush with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. They're not able to take advantage of the double teams that Dexter Lawrence is drawing. And this is what you've got. You've got a 1-3 team, and that's now trying to stay above water.
Last year when these teams met on Monday Night Football, it was a night to forget for the Giants offensive line, and Daniel Jones got sacked 11 times in that football game. It was a team record, tied a team record for the Seahawks. Looking at that offensive line now, Evan Neal is no longer in the starting lineup. There's been some big changes on that offensive line. Where is that group compared to what it was at this time last year when the Seahawks were able to feast on them? Seattle's, I'll be talking about this later in the show, Seattle's going to be coming in this game far less. They're going to be far more depleted on that defensive line, most likely, than what they were when these two teams met a year ago. Maybe some reinforcements coming for Sunday. But as far as the Giants' offensive line goes, that feels like it's been the biggest issue for them on offense. A lot of people are going to say the quarterback position, but that offensive line has been like Seattle's, where it feels like they've chronically struggled. Where has that group fit in so far for this offense and for Brian Daboll?
Believe it or not, if I had told you at the start of the season that the offensive line, the pass protection would be the least of this team's problems, you probably would have asked me what I was taking. That has been the case. The offensive line for the Giants for pass blocking, they've actually been pretty good, surprisingly. They are ranked in the middle of the pack on Pro Football Focus's pass blocking efficiency rating. You look at the percentage of sacks that Daniel Jones is responsible for, the percentage of pressures. I think it's somewhere around 20%. So the pass blocking of that offensive line, really not bad. Now, the run blocking, on the other hand, that's where that unit is still struggling. I mentioned the Dallas game last week, 24 carries, 26 yards, 1.1 yards per carry. That's just not going to get it done. The Giants are averaging, I believe it's 3.4 yards per rushing attempt, last in the league. I believe their running game overall average per game, I want to say, is 30th. That's not going to get it done. When you can't run the ball and now you have to say, okay, Daniel Jones, you beat us, that can be a little tricky, especially given, the fact that they seem to be relying on two receivers, Malik Neighbors, who I'm sure we'll talk about in a bit, Wan'Dale Robinson, both of whom are banged up this week. And, the Giants just have become one-dimensional on offense.
On the defensive side of the ball, fairly impressive performance against the Cowboys. I mean, Dallas's offense has not been quite as good as expected up to this point, but still a really solid Thursday night performance in defeat. And a lot of it's been with Dexter Lawrence leading the charge up front. But has there been anything that has surprised you from a positive standpoint for this Giants defense in these first four games that maybe gives a little bit more optimism that they're going to be able to contain Seattle's high-powered attack?
I wish I could say there was. I really do. I mean, look, Deonte Banks, who is supposed to be the cornerback one for the Giants, he struggled against top receivers this year. I don't know if it's a sophomore slump. I don't know what's going on with him. Part of it's his hand usage, but he is not playing very well to start the season. And then you look at the pass rush. All right. You have Dexter Lawrence up front, who is playing like the all-pro that he is, but nobody's taking advantage of the double and triple teams that he is drawing, which are creating one-on-one matchups. So therefore, you don't have a lot of production in terms of, Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns, who everybody thought was going to be this power duel, racking up the sacks. Those guys have struggled to get them. You've had a pressure here, a sack there, a hit there, but not enough on a consistent basis. And that's disturbing, quite frankly, because when you combine that with the problems on the back end of the defense, the defense hasn't been horrible, but it's not as good as I think a lot of us were maybe hoping it would be.
Last question that I've got. You mentioned Malik Neighbors and what a rookie season that he's having. 386 receiving yards already. Already looks like a bona fide one, which in Daniel Jones' defense, he hasn't had, in my opinion, a legit number two when he's been the quarterback for the New York Giants. So getting a true superstar caliber receiver is a big deal, but didn't practice on Wednesday. Do you think Malik Neighbors, with the little extra time between a Thursday and Sunday game, do you think he is going to be able to suit up on Sunday, or this truly is a 50-50 proposition and he potentially could miss this contest?
This is 50-50, Corbin. I mean, Coach Dable said that Malik Neighbors is in the early phase of the protocol, which means that he's got to be somewhere between 1 and 2, because once you get to phase 3 of the protocol, that's when you're allowed to engage in non-contact activity. And he is not there yet. He did not practice on Wednesday. Thursday is going to be a big day for Malik Neighbors. I think if he can advance to where he is, doing work in the red jersey, the non-contact jersey, then I would say maybe I would feel a little bit better about his chances for Sunday. But right now, I would say it's 50-50. I mean, I know they want to get him ready, but he's got to progress through that protocol.
When we come back, we are going to flip the script and we're going to look at some key storylines for the Seahawks coming off their first loss of the season as they get ready to face the Giants. You're listening to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This crossover is brought your way by Game Time. You shouldn't have to think about skipping a car payment when you want to buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, and comedy near you. They've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. You want to see the Seahawks and the Giants on Sunday at Lumen Field? You can get seats at the loudest venue in the NFL. Yeah, maybe that's not a fact, but we're going to say it is here. in the lower bowl for under $50. Great seats without breaking the budget to see the Seahawks as they try to bounce back from the first loss of the season. Game Time has deals on tickets right at the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price to write your own memories. If you find tickets in the same section row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. You're listening to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Glad to be teaming up. It seems like it's a yearly thing now. Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants, Seahawks Giants at Lumen Field on Sunday. Both teams looking to bounce back from Week 4 defeats. The Giants losing to the Cowboys on Thursday Night Football. The Seahawks in their own primetime match. The first time that Mike Macdonald's defense really struggled. Gave up 42 points. The Lions could do whatever they wanted, albeit with the Seahawks having 5 starters on defense out for at least half of the game, if not 3/4 of the game. They were banged up. They were decimated at all 3 levels. Can't use that as an excuse. But, Patricia, there's no question that is the biggest storyline for the Seahawks going into this game against the Giants, because New York does not have the offensive firepower overall that the Detroit Lions do. They don't have the playoff pedigree the Lions do now with an experienced, well-coached team. But if the Seahawks don't have former Giant Leonard Williams this game, they don't have Byron Murphy. If Uchenna Nwosu misses another game, if Boye Mafe can't play, if Julian Love can't play against his former team. I mean, I just rattled off a bunch of Pro Bowl and All-Pro caliber players that could be potentially out in this game. That is undoubtedly the biggest storyline for the Seahawks team going up against the Giants. And it creates some opportunities for New York, especially if 3 or 4 defensive linemen are out again and you're playing against third stringers for much of the game. That really can open things up. So I know Mike Macdonald, that he is hoping, hey, maybe erring side of caution. We had some of these guys out on Monday night. We can get a few of them back on Sunday and hopefully be firing closer to all cylinders with a Thursday game against the 49ers coming up only a few days afterward.
Yeah, I took a look at the injury report. It's quite an injury report. I know the Seahawks had a walkthrough on Wednesday, but of those injured players, which one do you think, is going to hurt the most if they're not in the lineup on Sunday?
I'm going to go with Leonard Williams, because I have felt like the Seahawks last game against the Lions, it felt like they were not able to overcome his absence. Now, Byron Murphy, the second or first round pick, he's been really good and he's an elite athlete. I think he's going to have an all-pro ceiling. He's that kind of a player. So obviously missing him is a big deal too. But Leonard Williams has been off to a tremendous start before suffering a rib injury against the Dolphins in Week 3, racking up a bunch of quarterback hits, multiple sacks, stuffing the run. He's been arguably the team's MVP on defense, and not having number 99 out there on Monday night was a huge deal, not just from pass rushing standpoint, but they really missed him in the run game. They've been moving him all over the place. There's a lot of other important names on that injury report, but they need to have Leonard Williams, and he's going to be chomping at the bit for a chance to play against his former team. He's going to be motivated to do that. He was listed as limited if they would have had a full practice on Wednesday, which to me, that is good news. That means that he is trending towards potentially playing in this game. But if they go into this matchup against the Giants without Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy II again, that is going to be a huge advantage for the New York Giants, not having to deal with those two and potentially being able to get their dormant run game going a little bit against a front line that was getting pushed around, missing all those key pieces on Monday night, albeit against the Lions offensive line that I think is one of the best in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, the Giants, look, they're trying to get right. And going into Seattle, that's always been a tough place to play. The noise, the 12th man there, kudos to them. So they'll take whatever break they can get. And, we know all about Leonard Williams, obviously, when he was here with the Giants. We know what a force he can be in the middle there. And I've actually said, ever since the Giants traded him away, that defensive line just hasn't been the same. I mean, Dexter Lawrence can't do it by himself. And Leonard Williams, I can just imagine what a disaster it would be. And quite frankly, I mean, if they end up missing him, if he can't play for whatever reason, and I personally think he's going to play because I know Leonard takes pride in playing and not missing time due to injury, but how would they compensate, do you think, if he's not able to play. I mean, I know next man up, but how do you compensate for a Leonard Williams missing from your lineup?
Well, they don't have another guy that's going to offer the same tools. Mike Morris is a similar build at 6'5", 300 pounds, second-year player to Michigan that has had some flashes, but he's not Leonard Williams. He has not got the athleticism that Leonard Williams brings to the table. That's why he fell into day 3 in the draft a couple years ago. There's a lot of good film. He's a physical player, uses his length well, but he is not the athlete that Leonard Williams is. Really, the issue comes after the starters because Jonathan Hankins, who previously played for the Giants, he's been excellent most of the season. He's a nice addition to the team. And then they've got Jarran Reed, who has been a fantastic starter for a long time. Those two are really good players. The problem is they can't play every snap in the game, particularly Hankins. You got to rotate players in. They were playing Miles Adams, who's a good situational reserve, but they had to play him a lot of snaps the other night. Mike Morris is not ready for that primetime matchup yet. He has not played a lot. He only played one game for a shoulder injury as a rookie. He ended up out for the rest of the season, so he hasn't gotten experience. They have very little depth there in terms of proven experience behind Jarran Reed and Jonathan Hankins. Now, Draymond Jones can slide inside, and if Uchenna Nwosu is available, he was limited on Wednesday. If he makes his debut, that opens the door for them to play Draymond Jones more inside, and that certainly would help their depth there. But the big question mark is certainly who's going to play after Jarran Reed and Jonathan Hankins. If Leonard Williams is there, then suddenly that isn't an issue because you're going to have his star power. You are not going to have to play Mike Morris as much, but really that's the $1 million question. How are you going to try to maneuver this lineup if he and Byron Murphy II are both out because they weren't able to do it against the Detroit Lions effectively on Monday night? And it's not like they're going to go out and trade for somebody immediately that's going to come in. These are short-term injuries. They're hoping they're going to get him back, but that certainly would be a difficult player. You can't replace him with one guy. You're going to have to hope your reserves play better than they did on Monday night.
And what about the secondary? You know, you speak of former Giants. I saw Julian Love on the injury report. What's the status with him?
It looks like Julian's going to have a good chance to play this week. Mike McDonald told reporters on Wednesday that he looks good and he's feeling good. So I would assume that he's in good shape. He bruised his thigh and didn't play in the second half on Monday night, but it sounds like he has bounced back from that pretty well. We'll see where things stand a couple days from now, but I expect that Julian Love is going to be back in the starting lineup for the Seahawks and that he dodged a serious injury bullet there on Monday night. And that's big for them. Their secondary second half did not look the same without him. They had some coverage busts that they haven't been making the first couple games. And I think it boils down to his communication and his ability to get everybody where they need to be. I think they badly missed him in the second half of that game and just getting him back out there. And there's also, again, that internal motivation. I'm playing my former team. I want to go out and have a big game. So I'm fully expecting Julian Love's going to play in this game.
Yeah, you guys got, 3 former Giants on defense? Hankins, Williams, Julian Love, and what kind of a difference have they made for the defense?
Well, Julian Love was a Pro Bowler last year. I mean, he's been fantastic for the most part. He has had a few tackles he's missed here and there, but otherwise he's played at a high level. Jonathan Hankins, I think, has been one of their under-the-radar free agent signings. He has been excellent stuff in the middle. He can't do it alone, though. And again, he's a huge guy. He can't play 90% of the snaps. So they've got to find a way to have somebody else step in and give him some relief and be able to pick up the slack. I don't think Cameron Young's going to be off the PUP list this week. He did return to practice Wednesday, but they're going to have that 21-day window. I don't suspect he's going to be playing in this game that quickly coming off a knee injury, but they've got some depth concerns at that nose tackle position. But Hankins has played well when he's been called upon. And the other player, obviously Leonard Williams, has been an impact player. I mentioned this before the rib injury in week 3. He got off to an all-pro caliber start to this season. The way that he was torching quarterbacks, he was winning with power, he was winning with moves. They're moving him all over the line. He's played 2-point stance outside. He's played nose tackle. He's played 1-tech, 3-tech. They've played him everywhere. This defense is perfect for Leonard Williams playing for Mike McDonald in this aggressive, flexible scheme. So really, all 3 of these guys have been excellent additions to this defense. They just got to have all 3 of them on the field together on Sunday to play against their former team.
Guys that I'm sure the Giants are missing, no question. And then, of course, on offense, you have Geno Smith, but I saw some of the receivers. His receivers are banged up. What's the status on those guys?
They've had guys in and out of the injury report at the receiver position, but I'm anticipating that all those guys are going to be ready to go. Tyler Lockett's had a thigh issue he's been dealing with since training camp, but he's played in every game. DK is going to play. He's a gamer. Jack Smith and Jigba's ready to go. They've got Jake Bobo, Laviska Shenault. Their injury concerns there are minimal. Those guys will all be playing in this game. So Geno Smith should be at full strength there. It just continues to be the offensive line where Abraham Lucas is still not coming back to practice yet. So they're still going to have their third string right tackle playing in Stone Forsythe, with George Fant also on injured reserve. So that's been the big issue this year. Can they keep their running backs healthy? They are going to have Ken Walker III in this game. He had a monster game on Monday night with 3 touchdowns. So they're going to have all their running backs. All the skill guys should be good to go. That is one of the best skill position groups in the NFL when they've got everybody healthy, and they should be good to go on Sunday. It's just going to boil down to it comes down to every game. Are you going to give Geno Smith and the running backs enough blocking so they can do what they can do?
Going to be a good one for sure. I mean, the Giants, I can't remember the last time they won. I don't have it in front of me, but my goodness, that's going to be a tough challenge for the Giants flying cross country. I mean, I know the Seattle Seahawks, they're on a short work week, having played on Monday night. But let me ask you this, Corbin, how is the mood in the locker room? Are they angry? Are they, have they put it behind them? What's your sense of the temperature in the locker room?
This team, I think, even after the game on Monday night, was there disappointment? Absolutely. They were upset about the lack of communication on defense, just not executing the way that they think they are capable of doing. And they weren't certainly going to blame it on the fact they were missing guys. In fact, they were very vehement about the fact that, look, that we could have gotten the job done. We just didn't execute. And so that was really the thing. But I think there was a general sense in the locker room that, hey, look, we had chances to still win this game in the fourth quarter. And it boils down to the offense. Geno Smith, he put the team on his back and he kept us in the football game. Even when the defense was playing its worst game of the year and had all those injuries, they still had chances to win the game. So it wasn't like it was a game that they got completely blown out. They got within one score multiple times in the second half. They just couldn't quite get over that hump because the defense couldn't get the stops that they needed to win that football game. But they're hoping they have more guys back healthy and that they're able to turn the corner this week and get back to playing their style of football on defense to complement that offense that looks to really be getting into full rhythm with the new offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb. When we come back, we're going to be tackling the most important keys to victory for both teams and, of course, our predictions against the spread. Don't go away. You're listening to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. This episode is brought to you away by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can check out live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. You can bet on everything from DK Metcalf scoring a touchdown against the Giants or Noah Fant being the first player in Sunday's game to have a 30-plus yard reception. Just throw in a $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Visit FanDuel.com today and download America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to Crossover Thursday here on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Corbin Smith of Locked On Seahawks. Glad to be teaming up with Patricia Traina of Locked On Giants. A special thanks to all the 12s and Giants country, as always, for tuning in and making Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Giants your first listen 5 days a week. It's time to dive into keys to victory and predictions. Patricia, this Giants team, as you mentioned, a lot of self-inflicted wounds have really been a culprit for them starting off 1-3, another dismal start to the season with a lot of people under a lot of pressure right now, including Brian Daboll and Daniel Jones, the head coach quarterback combination. When you look at this game from New York's perspective, with or without Malik Neighbors, when you look at this game, what do you think are the keys for the Giants to be able to go to Seattle and pull off an upset, which, by the way, they've done recently? They did it in 2020. I know that feels like a long time ago now, but they have come to the Pacific Northwest and pulled off an upset before. What are the ingredients for Brian Daboll's team to do that again on Sunday?
Well, first and foremost, they cannot, and I repeat, cannot have penalties on scoring drives. That's been a problem for them. I want to say 30 to 30-something% of the penalties that they have had have resulted in stalled scoring drives. So you can't have that. Now, obviously, playing in front of the 12th man, Loud environment. I expect the Giants to use a lot of silent counts. So they've got to be sharp because when you're using silent counts, that's where you can have even more mistakes. So no pre-snap penalties. That's number one. Number two, they've got to get that run game going. You mentioned the injuries to the defensive line. It's now or never for that Giants run game. Now, Devin Singletary is dealing with a groin issue. I think he's going to play, though. I don't know how effective he's going to be. Maybe we see a little sprinkling of Tyrone Tracy and Eric Gray, a little bit more than what we've seen. But the Giants just can't be one-dimensional. The other thing, the drops. The Giant receivers are dropping at least one pass per game, and they're coming at the worst possible time. But I would say the biggest key, Corbin, is in the red zone. The Giants have been terrible in the red zone this year. They've had no problems going up and down between the 20s. The red zone has been an issue. I would like to see Giants head coach Brian Dable, who is calling the plays this year. I'd like to see him start maybe calling for some plays to the tight ends who have been woefully underused in this offense. So, red zone, not committing penalties despite the anticipated noise level, and just really avoid the self-inflicted wounds. And I think if the Giants can do that, play a clean game, I think they should be able to be competitive.
From a Seahawks perspective, the first one's going to seem like one that's a low-hanging fruit. But look, the Seahawks in the game on Monday night, Detroit had 13 first downs in the first half, and they only had 2 third-down conversions in that. They were consistently moving the chains on first and second down, and they continued to do that in the second half. They had a 70-yard touchdown to Jameson Williams on a first down immediately after the Seahawks had scored to get some of that momentum back. Poof, it is gone with that long touchdown. They have got to win on early downs. You've got to force the Giants into more third down opportunities, particularly you'd like to see 3rd and 5 and longer so that you can have your rushers pin their ears back and come after Daniel Jones. They have got to win on first down in particular. The Lions were dominant on that first down, on first downs in general in Monday's game. If the Seahawks continue to have issues giving up fairly sizable run plays and giving up long completions on first down, and even 7-8 yard completions to set up a favorable second down, they have got to have a much higher hit rate in terms of winning on those early downs defensively. And I think if they can do that, it's going to open up the pass rush. It's going to open up opportunities for turnovers. They weren't able to get those dominoes going on Monday night. So they've got to be able to play at a higher level on first and second down on defense. Penalties, I'm going to go with a familiar theme with you. This has been a team that's been penalized a lot, and unfortunately, it hasn't been mostly penalties that you can live with. There's always good penalties in terms of effort, but those have not been a lot of the penalties Seattle's been having called against them. They have got to find a way to play more disciplined football, and this is on both sides of the ball, because if you are giving free yardage to the underdog, that dramatically improves their chances to come into Seattle. In fact, I remember 2020, that was a big problem for the Seattle Seahawks in that game. They had a lot of penalties that kept Colt McCoy and company in that game, and they ended up winning it. And from an offensive standpoint, just get the darn ball to your skill players. You mentioned the struggles that Deonte Banks has had, and just in general, it feels like Dexter Lawrence by himself has been able to neutralize some of the issues that the Giants have had defensively, just because of how dominant he is. Seattle knows that firsthand. Blocking him is always difficult, but can you get the ball to DK Metcalf and your playmakers? Because this feels like a Giants secondary that's ripe for giving up some big plays. You got to give Geno Smith the time to be able to do that, though. So it boils down to the pass protection. I'm saying this: 2 or fewer sacks, 5 or fewer quarterback hits. To me, those are the magic numbers. If they can do that, and Geno is able to get the football to his receivers, especially with home field advantage, I'd feel really good about the Seahawks being able to bounce back and win this football game against the Giants secondary that, quite frankly, on tape, I have not been that impressed with here in these first few games. Let's get to the predictions now, shall we? Obviously, we're going to have our score predictions on our Friday shows, but as we do every week, we're going to look at the spread and discuss some predictions from that standpoint. And right now, Patricia, the Giants are 6.5-point underdogs heading into this week with a 43.5-point over under. So it's lower than last week, Giants and Lions Seahawks game, but it's a 6.5-point spread. considering New York's season so far, starting 1-3, they have to travel cross country to Lumen Field. Do you think the Giants cover that 6.5 point spread, or do you think they're going to have a difficult time doing that?
I don't think they're going to cover it. This team's averaging 15 points per game, less than what they averaged last year, just by a fraction, but still less. Seattle, they scored 29 points in a loss to the Detroit Lions. All right. I don't see, I mean, the Giants offense, like I said, the run game hasn't been there. And now you've got the injury to Devin Singletary. You may not have Malik Neighbors. You know, you've got the drops and everything. And let's not forget, I haven't even mentioned Daniel Jones in this equation. Daniel Jones has been inconsistent with underthrowing guys or overthrowing guys. So, I mean, I just don't see it. I think the Giants, quite honestly, they'll be lucky if they score 17 points in this game. So, I think that the Seahawks, given the weapons they have, given that it sounds like their offense is a little bit healthier in terms of their skill position players, I think they're gonna go crazy, especially against, like I said, the struggling Giants cornerbacks. Which by the way, there's still injuries there that I didn't talk about. Drew Phillips, the slot cornerback, not practicing. He's got a calf. Adoree Jackson, not practicing. He's got a calf. They're both in danger of missing their second straight game. So, yeah, I'm concerned about that secondary.
Look, I'm always scared of trap games, especially when you get into the month of October. Like this matchup, I look back at that 2020 game, for example, and I think about the horror that was the heavily favored Seahawks somehow losing that game and coughing it up and the offense not performing. And so I always look at games like this with kind of that eye half open, like, I don't know, this could be a trap. I feel like Mike McDonald's not going to allow that to happen. Now, I don't know. I'm going to dish out my score prediction tomorrow, but I think coming back to home is going to help. I think 6.5 points. I think they're going to be able to cover that. I'm not going to say right now how much I think they're going to cover that, but I think they're going to be able to cover that spread. I just think that they are a better football team. I think they're going to be healthier in defense than they were last week. I'm not saying to take the Giants lightly at all. I think the Giants are more than capable of coming in. If you aren't ready, any NFL team can come in and win, but it feels like there are a lot of advantages that should, in theory, work to Seattle's advantage. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think they're going to cover on tomorrow's show of Locked On Seahawks. We'll have a chance to dive into the score predictions, but we are in agreement. We think the Seahawks are going to cover on that 6.5 point spread. We'll end up seeing what happens, but certainly this is a big game for both teams for different reasons. The Giants just trying to get closer to 500. Seattle, they're still in first place in the NFC West. They want to continue to fend off the San Francisco 49ers and the rest of their competitors in the division. So this is a key game for both teams. Really looking forward to it.
Hopefully it's a good one. Hopefully it's a competitive one, and hopefully the Giants don't get blown out.
As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Patricia at Patricia_Traina. Make sure to check in to Locked On Seahawks and Locked On Giants tomorrow for our Friday episodes, and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.